Welcome everyone to another episode of the awesome Cloud Security of Alliance West Michigan. Not another demo. I actually don't know what the episode is because Matt normally does the intro part. So for those of you on YouTube, you can leave a comment and tease me. So as most of you know, the premise of this is, why in the crazy times it's a new year, it's 2021. We're all busy. Some of us, especially in healthcare, insurance, are getting extra attacks this year because, the bad guys are bored, apparently. Why would we want to take a half an hour or an hour to sit down and listen to your product? So the idea is like not super PowerPointy. We only have one rule. If you say an acronym, you have to explain what it is. And then after that, you don't have to explain it anymore. So is it William or Bill?
I go by Will.
Will. Okay. Yeah. Even better. All right.
Make it
Will
easy.
Wheaton. I liked Will Wheaton. So Will, introduce yourself, and then we'll have Jacob introduce himself.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. So my name's Will Peters. I am a regional account manager here for Trend Micro, covering Michigan for enterprise accounts. Been with Trend about 6 years, and been covering basically the same patch and same customers for that amount of time, and just excited to be here, and been working with the CSA Alliance here in West Michigan as much as we can to just help the community learn more about security.
Which they had some wonderful goodies in the December event, so we do appreciate them for that. Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself and tell you how you got into the crazy world of information security?
All right. Yeah. Hi, guys. So I'm Jacob Lake. I'm an engineer with Trend Micro. I've been here about a year. I came from a DevOps role at IBM. So I really wanted to, I basically joined to continue my learning, right? I wanted to mix my DevOps experience with security. And I just really like that idea of jumping in and expanding my knowledge and creating that whole pipeline, right? The whole CI/CD and add in security as well. So that's a lot of my focus. And in the year I've been here, I've learned an incredible amount of security, and I'm, every day is a learning experience. So I'm glad to be here.
It is never a dull moment in security. You never get, if you get bored in security, then you're doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong.
Exactly. I'm learning that every day. Yep.
Well, and the good news, since you're not with IBM anymore, I can't really tease you and ask you a whole bunch of questions about IBM App Scan and the DAS tool. So that's not the topic today. The topic is the platform that Trend Micro has called Cloud One, and just the moving right of, especially with digital transformation in the last year, of like the push to more cloud, more SaaS base and everything, right? Like I even saw, I wish I would have saved it. I even saw a new acronym, something I didn't even think about anymore, and they're trying to say that as a service. So
right. So give us the elevator pitch, Will or Jacob. What
Sure.
Give me the 30 seconds. Why does this thing not suck?
Right. He's a security architect now, so pretend you're pitching to him.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll keep it high level, but Jacob can take it into all the details with his background. But from a Cloud One perspective and Trend Micro perspective, Trend Micro has been around for 32 years. We grew up in the enterprise space, protecting our large enterprise customers. And Cloud One it has come to fruition because of this big kind of cloud migration, wanting to utilize the cloud, this big kind of push in the industry to see what that's all about. So Cloud One is helping with that migration. And with most customers that we work with, this is more of a transition. It's not an instant cutover. There's a hybrid cloud environment, multi-cloud environment, and that's the new norm. So you got physical, virtual cloud workloads, and just kind of this big hybrid cloud arena where there's lots of new services that you get when you start utilizing the cloud. So the explosion of cloud services, and what Cloud One is doing is it's making that transition easy and consistent across all of these different environments. So you got, VMware, you got AWS, you have Azure, you got Google Cloud.
So do you guys play then mostly in the IIS or IaaS space, infrastructure as a service, more than SaaS or any of the other ones?
Yeah, so we do all sorts of different things. Cloud One, there's 6 tiers right now. So we do IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, and that's going to be our cloud workload security solution. So that's going to protect security for physical, virtual, cloud, and container workloads across that multi-cloud environment. Doesn't matter where those servers are, consistent policy, consistent security, the way that server is attacked. But we do play in the other cloud spaces as well. So, when you think about cloud and these other services that our customers and organizations are adopting, you have container security and image level security from a container perspective. You got application security. So that's where you don't have access to the infrastructure or the operating system to install an agent. So we have runtime self-protection technology built into the web apps and application layer. From that standpoint, we do file storage security. So that's going to be your S3 buckets and Amazon, your Google Cloud Storage and Azure Blobs. We have a solution called Conformity, which is going to provide cloud security and compliance posture management. So think of AWS well-architected framework, HIPAA. There's certain compliance requirements that are required and recommended when utilizing cloud services. So there's an automated tool that can ensure that it's set up and deployed securely. And then we do have network security as well. So, virtual private networks. Yeah. So think of like your IPS in a data center, but we can do that across the hybrid cloud. So
are you tying in then at the cloud provider level? So like, let's say I use Azure as my cloud environment. Are you guys tying in like as an OAuth app that can then read and change things within my cloud environment, or are you running on the endpoint, or where exactly, what layer does this service run on?
So Jacob could probably give you a little bit more detail there, but it's the network layer.
Right. Yeah. So essentially what we'd be doing is we'd be protecting your virtual private clouds, right? So all the traffic that's traversing from the internet into your cloud environment or to your private, public subnets that exist in your VPC. We have a few different ways of deploying it. It really depends on your setup, right? And we have the availability to make it high availability and redundant, right? So it can fail over and continue to flow traffic.
So this thing is a gateway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And then we do integrate into the AWS firewall now too. So as we detect IPS events that are being triggered on our network security, we can automatically send rules, aka automation, to the AWS firewall to block the incoming exploit. Okay,
then my first question, I guess not my first question, but my next question
I was going to say, it would be your next question.
Is tell me why this is better than just using a firewall.
Well, let me add to that, right? And maybe it'll probably help Jacob, because I was kind of thinking the same thing. When you integrate, right, like we'll take AWS. AWS has, CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and all those other things. But to Will's point, that's just one path, right? You have a multi-system environment, right? So you have some Azure, you have some AWS. Do you guys hook in and then work collaboratively with something like AWS CloudWatch or CloudTrail, or to have full visibility and control on the back end, do you kind of have to replace that? And then when you're ingesting stuff, you have your terminal and then you make the changes. Is that kind of where you're going with that, Anthony?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe just to define it a little bit more to help, what the network layer security is doing is IPS at the the network layer within the virtual cloud. So we're not necessarily replacing those other tools that you would use in AWS or Azure, but we're providing threat protection, things like virtual patching, vulnerability shielding, things that we would traditionally do with a physical IPS in a data center. When you take a look at what's going on in a cloud environment, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, you can't put an agent on everything. There's services that are going to be running in the Azure or AWS virtual cloud that are vulnerable, that maybe have exploits that can be leveraged by an attacker. So what we're doing is it's all the traffic's flowing through like a gateway to this product, and then we're using our IPS capabilities to provide proactive preemptive protection to those vulnerabilities. So if you look at trend and what we do in the industry, we're the largest identifier of zero-day vulnerabilities globally. Roughly 60 to 70% of zero-day vulnerabilities Trend Micro identifies. And what that does for our customers is we have those rules available to provide that proactive protection to these services, to these servers and operating systems that are either on-prem or in the cloud, but more specifically in this conversation, anything that would reside in a virtual private network in the cloud.
So okay, now I see you're going, Anthony, with that question, like what kind of power would you have in AWS, right? So if it's OA auth, then can you set functionality in AWS to be able to trigger certain things, right? Because that is the one that would be a powerful thing. If you saw, let's say, we do a brand new startup, and Anthony and I are configuring everything. We use your tool, but we're okay with setting a certain threshold. Like if you see this kind of attack,
do this,
then I'm going to give Trend Micro permission, right? Because they, in the AWS to create a new firewall rule or, shut down that S3 bucket. So can you get that granular, and can you reach in that deep into AWS, Jacob?
As of right now, I haven't gone that deep into it. I really just use it to layer protection over my VPC, because I have some serverless stuff in there that I can't protect. So I'd have to look into that more. I really can't answer. I'm not sure. It's something we just.
That's okay. I'd rather have you. We'd rather have you say let us get back to you than to give us marketing fluff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'll be totally honest with you. I haven't used it like that. I'm sure we have a very close relationship with AWS, and I think we're going to continue to develop based on that setup. And like I said, it was just announced about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, so I'm still getting a lot of the details and the best way to use it. So I'll definitely have to get back to you.
No, that's okay. Because where I'm going with that, and I'll defer to Lloyd because he understands that aspect more. But one I'm seeing people ask for, right, in the SMB space is, even Spectrum, like we're not just gonna be this shop only. We might be primarily Azure or primarily AWS, but just with the amount of vendors and the different companies that we work with, we're gonna have to have a multi-cloud environment. So having that single pane of glass, and I'll let Lloyd ask a question to that, is huge.
You really just say that right now?
I did, because it fits. It's one of the marketing terms that it fits. You need to have that central location. And okay, give me another way to say single pane of glass, Anthony. I'll do it. But I mean, Lloyd, because we're identifying with other businesses, right? Like that, there is a visibility gap, especially going cloud to cloud, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think that having that, I'm going to use it, Anthony, single pane of glass, until you invent a new term for it.
Sure, I'll work on that.
Yeah, thanks. Is really important. The things I'm thinking about are like the enabling the business, getting the privacy teams, the compliance teams, the visibility. I think you mentioned conformity. So, when you think about the network security, we've got that covered, but how can you then use that same pane to enable your privacy and compliance teams to ensure that what you're doing in your systems is compliant to what your regulatory or your policies are?
Yeah, so I mean, conformity would definitely help with that, adhere to compliance and posture management. So it's going to go through and it's going to look at all the way that the cloud infrastructure is set up based on whatever compliance that you're trying to meet, and then it'll spit out a report and say, hey, these 10 things need to be, corrected, and here's how to do it. So there is some automation built into that. You can automatically go through and have some of that stuff automatically change depending on the organization and how much automation they want to built into it without, with certain change requests and approvals necessary. But yeah, from a cloud infrastructure perspective, conformity is going to make sure that it's configured correctly and deployed securely, so you don't have things like an S3 bucket that's sitting there with no password, for example.
Yeah.
Are you
I think a lot of...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jacob.
I was going to say, a lot of people, if you're not using the auto remediation side, right, we see a lot of people take advantage of using like Jira and integration, right? So if it does recognize some compliance issues in the environment, a ticket is created, which is routed to the required user to fix it, right? So it's a good way. If you're not going to auto remediate, at least you can track these issues, right? So they're documented, and you have that auditing capability.
That's actually you're actually the first vendor, at least that I've worked with, that like mentioned specifically Jira by name for ticketing and with development stuff. So that's kind of cool.
It's probably one of the most popular used tools out there, I'd say, for that.
Yeah, I've been using it. I'm not even gonna say how long I've been using Jira in some way, shape, or form. So Will, are you seeing, especially with like compliance modules and stuff like that, are you starting to see even smaller and medium businesses really have an aha moment knowing that new regulations coming? Like last year, everybody, CCPA, California. What is the second one? I know it's Protection Act, but
Consumer Protection Act.
I don't know. Okay, I butchered that one. I broke my own rule. Anyways, the California one, and then now you have the New York one coming online. You have biometric laws coming in out of Illinois. Are you seeing, non-traditional businesses starting to understand that, oh, hey, we got to get ahead of this, and asking more about that particular module that you guys have?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's going to vary industry to industry and business to business, but it definitely comes up a lot, especially when we're talking about cloud, because maybe they're just not familiar with tools that have the capabilities to do that type of stuff. So conformity can definitely help from a standpoint. There's so many different compliance packages that we adhere to, like I mentioned, HIPAA and PCI and things like that, are some of the standard ones that you'd hear, or NIST. Right. But there's so many that we can help adhere to. And then, even going beyond that, just to bring the visibility to meeting requirements there. But, things like servers that are out in the cloud and needing those servers to meet the requirements as well. So kind of taking it a step beyond and providing security controls in place for PCI compliance on a server. That's where the workload security product can come in to help, take it a step beyond kind of just visibility of what needs to be fixed, but also helping customers meet those requirements in these different areas of services that they're using in the cloud.
So how easy does this make it? Because I can do probably a lot of this just in the native, cloud platform itself. With AWS, I can make sure my server is PCI compliant by going through, all the configuration items and whatnot. So does your platform, more cleanly, can outline that, and so to help make those processes and that steps easier?
Yeah, I think from the standpoint of where we see the adoption in these types of tools, it really goes to the breadth and depth of where we can reach and help meet compliance and provide security, all from one agent, one tool, one platform. Of course, there's various other tools that you can use that are free to help get you most of the way there, or some of the times all the way there. But if from a standpoint of these large organizations that we use, when I talk about, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environments where they got servers on-prem, in the cloud, various cloud platforms, how do you keep that consistent when you got DevOps culture and containers and auto scaling groups where you have servers that are going up and down based on demand? With these tools, they're all automated to ensure that there are no security gaps when that stuff goes kind of live into production. So I think that that's really kind of where the rubber meets the road there, is these complex environments, big shift to cloud, and how do we secure this environment that's so new, and all these various services that we're trying to leverage to help our business meet the needs to our customers in a more efficient and effective way.
Are you seeing businesses like we'll skip medium businesses, no offense to small businesses out there. Let's talk about some medium and larger size ones. Are you starting to see their importance of like segmentation and even the internet visibility? Because I know, Lloyd and I, talking with different vendors, even outside of Spectrum Health, like, you get a big enough company, right? And they have several, private cloud environments. How do you keep track of the visibility between just, VPC to VPC, or like your cold hard steel, your old school network gear, talking to your Amazon virtual private cloud, whether it's via direct connection or something like that? Are you seeing them ask more questions related to that?
So from a networking perspective, we only focus on network IPS. So, if we're getting into firewalling and segmenting and micro-segmenting, we don't necessarily, as far as I'm aware, kind of cross that threshold. Ultimately, the long-term vision is to provide a security platform to our customers to help them from a standpoint of securing this complex environment. So it's more about making sure that the attackers can't get into the environment by leveraging our network IPS for things that you can't put an agent on. It's about providing security to a server the way that a server is attacked. And you got servers that are spread across these multi-cloud environments. So how do we shield those servers from being vulnerable? And that's where our host-based IPS comes into play, or our host-based intrusion prevention system comes into play on our workload security solution, so that, if you have servers that are all over the place, various versions of Windows and Linux and legacy operating systems, and, you guys, some of you work at a hospital. I mean, there's just so much stuff. So
it's all over the place. We're not gonna lie.
Yeah. So you got
we have a great patch management program, but
there you go. Yeah.
If there's an operating system out there that's invented, it's in the healthcare system somewhere.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm directly answering the question the way that it's being asked, but really what we're doing is these very complex environments, going from legacy operating systems up to things where you don't even have an operating system, and helping provide consistent security and posture against all of that.
So could you place some of this stuff in between? Because we'll use the healthcare example because it's easy and we're familiar with it. So you have a couple, clinical devices, right, by different manufacturer, and they may speak different languages, right? Let's just say, okay, sure, this device speaks English, this device speaks Spanish, and they got to get they're pushing their information to your EMR or wherever they're going. Do you guys have the ability to even sit between those at like IPS level? So even though these two, this infusion pump and this blood pressure monitor don't talk to each other this way, they still have to come up and push data into the EHR. Do you guys have the ability to sit inside the system and like have an internal IPS, because you have external stuff? Can you bring one inside and sit there?
Yeah, so that we can do both. I would say more commonly what we see, so we're talking more along the lines of an IoT or an OT environment, where you got machines that
SCADA.
are
I use my own acronym.
So you got these devices that are on the network, or maybe they're on a separate network, but you still want to provide security. Maybe the manufacturer doesn't allow you to, or doesn't recommend you install agents on them for performance. And these are, critical monitoring devices for someone's health. So you want to provide security. So from a Trend Micro perspective, that's where we get into kind of our IoT type solutions. So it can go both ways, but in particular to what you're asking, we have devices that can sit in front of those devices or sit in front of those networks to provide security to those devices that are talking in those languages. So they're like you use English and Spanish, like they're talking different protocols on the network than what your traditional IT would. Trend Micro does the threat research in this industry, or on these types of devices, on these types of ports and protocols that are non-traditional IT, to provide network layer or host layer IPS for that type of environment.
So for the record, I did have to look. I did have to DuckDuckGo SCADA because I always get the C wrong. It's supervisory control and data acquisition devices. So
there you
I'm
go.
glad it's called SCADA because I cannot remember that.
Yeah,
I would have
that's
had to
good to know.
DuckDuckGo it too.
And always use DuckDuckGo.
Always.
You can take that outside of the healthcare industry and think about other industries that have these OT environments. So manufacturing's big in Michigan, or the auto industry, right? They have these other environments, utilities, so gas and power, have all these types of devices that are not on a traditional IT network. And a lot of the times we refer to them as OT, or operating technology, or IoT, Internet of Things type environments where we can provide security at that layer, which is this conversation is very outside of kind of the Cloud One conversation that we're talking about.
Sorry, we go off on a tangent. You're
That's
more
okay.
than welcome to bring us back, because the next question I was going to ask is like, would this, not to put you on the spot, Jacob, but would something like this solution could have helped with what happened with the Florida water treatment center this weekend, where, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but a small town in Florida, they had attack on one of their chlorination or one of their water treatment systems, where the bad guy was in for short amount of time. Kudos to them for quick response time. Like within 3 to 5 minutes, they bumped up something that was supposed to be just like 1,000 parts per million to 11,000 parts per million,
and made the water not drinkable.
The water not drinkable, but it wasn't long enough to where that city was able to get it back under control. But when you talk about stuff like this, are those kind of companies having that? Like, are you seeing small municipalities? You're supposed to be helping me out with Lloyd with hard words like that. Are you seeing, some local governments starting to have those conversations with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, to go back on what Will said, SCADA is a very popular one, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking for solutions that are in these complex air gap networks, right? Because they still need protection. Once the attacker gets in the environment, he can move laterally in there. So you still need that protection. And it's definitely a conversation that's increased in the past, I would say, year. Will's been here longer than I have, but it seems to be coming up more and more in the past 6 months, I would say. But Will, I'll let you add in on that.
No, I mean, I think you covered it pretty good. We definitely work with the municipalities, the cities, the counties within Michigan, here locally and just across the state, for various things, different networks that are just not part of the traditional IT network. So we can provide security for. I had mentioned healthcare and auto and manufacturing because I think those are kind of representative of a lot of the users that we work with and the companies that we work in that space. But it covers a pretty big area. But Trend does the research in these industries on the protocols that are used in these types of environments to identify vulnerabilities and provide security at that layer.
Do you tap into, what other like threat intelligence sources do you guys tap into? Do you Are you able to integrate with like Shodan and other places to get like updated vulnerability information, or is it just an amalgamation?
A lot of the heavy lifting is done through our own trend threat research. So we have a branch of trend, or a part of trend called trend research. And that's just a conglomerate of things. You know, we have attacker or white hat attackers that sit on the dark web. We have honeypots. We got billions of sensors across the globe. We got, you know, things just all over the place, customers that are feeding us data. You know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Zero Day Initiative, or ZDI, but that's owned by Trend Micro, and that's one of the predominant ways that we identify most of the vulnerabilities globally. So there's just so many different things to even cover in and out. We could go for hours on, you know, what trend threat research does. But just being in the industry for 32 years, it's obviously grown into so many different areas. So I don't know at what level we might integrate with other security companies. I'm sure we do. I don't know if it's not public knowledge, or maybe, you know, it's, you know,
probably not sexy, right? Like Anthony and I run into that, and I know Lloyd does from time to time, when we ask about like APIs and like cross vendor collaboration. And it's always a tricky one, right? Because it seems to be, especially this last year, you know, the different companies partnering together, you know, like Abnormal Security, you know, and Microsoft, and, you know, you have like Zscaler are starting to partner with other people, because to your point, we do see a need for, how do we create a holistic ecosystem without having to worry about like best of breed. We got to make sure the things talk to each other. I'll be quiet for a minute and let Anthony vent about that, right? Because, you know, we're going to say it one more time just to annoy you, Anthony, but having that single pane, but Lloyd's not wrong. We need that, right? Like we are trying to decrease alert fatigue. You know, it is a real thing. I mean, marketing beats it up all the time, but it is still a real thing in 2021.
Yeah.
So to help with some of that, do you guys feed to other SIMs for
Yeah, I mean, any of the, I mean, we have APIs, and you can basically do whatever you want with the data that we have. But you guys mentioned that this single pane of glass, and what are we doing to help with that? We definitely integrate with other technologies. So even at the big network provider, you know, firewall providers, like, so if our threat intelligence picks up on something that's unknown or malicious command and control, we can share that information on the network to, you know, your firewall to make sure that it's taking proactive preventative measures against, you know, something that we identify. But just to take the conversation a step further, again, we're getting a little bit outside of the topic at hand, which is completely fine, but Trend does so many different things. So
sorry, you said you do so many things. So like we want to know about each one. So
hours.
Yeah, it's fine, and it's great, because I think a lot of people are just not as familiar with Trend in all these different areas. But you know, Anthony, you'd mentioned that you're an EDR type guy, and you know, with the industry, so that's endpoint detection and response.
Yes, good job, Will.
So Trend has been doing that, and we've been in that space. But from an industry, it's making a shift to XDR, which is cross-platform detection and response. And why that's important is because these threats are these attacker organizations are so sophisticated. And you're mentioning alert fatigue. I mean, these are things that we hear all day in and out. Every customer we talk to, it's just too much. I can't pay attention to it. I don't know what is a high priority. What should I look at? This gray alert means nothing to me, but it actually could be something much bigger than that. So from a Trend Micro perspective, being in the industry for 32 years, we've had technologies in all these different spaces. So network, endpoint, server, email, gateway, IoT, mobile.
You've got one acronym you can sell me that has them all. Right, yeah. No,
Is that what you're
if I hear
with
another
XDR,
vendor,
Anthony?
if I hear
'Cause I'm
another
like-
vendor say XDR to me, I'm gonna lose my cool.
So
I'm so sick of hearing that.
Then I'm not going to have
It's
you
all-
co-host
it's all
because
marketing
next month
fluff.
I'm doing a podcast
Yeah.
on XDR because I
So
want to learn about it more. So
yeah,
I've
I
never
mean, it's
even
the
heard.
next. It's the next buzzword. That's all it is. I guarantee.
Really?
it.
so you're right. A lot of marketing is jumping on the XDR bandwagon and making it very forcefully, something that it might not be. But from where I'm
security
going with it,
marketing doing forceful stuff.
yeah.
I'm
never happened.
shocked. This
Yeah.
is my shocked face.
To be fair, we did change the name. If it makes you feel any better, we no longer specifically refer to it as XDR. We call it Vision One, right? Which kind of
Okay, this is good.
kind of goes
So it
hand in
makes
hand with
it-
your single
So it
pane
makes
glass.
Anthony a little less upset.
If that makes you feel any better.
A little bit.
So Trend has actually been doing this for a long time. We called it something else before it got, into this industry term. So we used to call it connected threat defense. But anyways, the whole concept is we got these sensors all over the enterprise, right? Maybe not every customer has every piece of the technology, but if you think about alert fatigue and gray alerts and what you should and shouldn't pay attention to, it's very difficult, even with a SIM, to kind of tell it what to look for. So what Trend's doing is we're taking all the telemetry data and we're putting it into our analytics, big data analytics pool. So all these alerts get pooled, and then we put our security analytics and threat intelligence and everything, kind of the secret sauce behind Trend, into all these alerts. And ultimately what it does is it gives you one high priority actionable alert. So it gives you all the reasons of this is why you need to take a look at it. This is what happened, right? So from a standpoint of a threat,
Right. But what you just described to me is a SIM, right? So we're getting this cross of, okay, I've got a SIM, but my EDR now wants to be an XDR. So do I need my SIM still, or what? Like everybody's crossing their streams, it seems lately.
Yeah.
So while I don't think that the collaboration and the pooling of that data isn't valuable,
Yeah, I was going to
I just
say,
think
I
we
was going to
need-
yell at you if you were to say it wasn't.
we need to figure out where that's going to live. But that's a conversation not for Trend Micro. That's maybe
yeah.
I'll start my own
That's an-
podcast
that's
called
an
Anthony's Rants or
industry
something.
issue.
Yeah.
So where I was trying to go with it is we'll share this actionable alert with your SIM or your SOAR or whatever. So ultimately, you're not flooding your SIM with a bunch of noise and alerts. What we're doing is we're using our security analytics and intelligence that we've cultivated over 32 years to say, hey, these 5 endpoints were part of the attack, these 2 servers, and they made this command and control. And by the way, this started from this email, and that email resides in whatever 10 users' inboxes. So that information is what gets shared with the SIM. So it reduces the noise and alert fatigue that our customers and people in security are used to at this point.
So you could say it's a SIM filter, so to speak, possibly
Right,
as well.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then you kind of you're not you don't have to spend as much depending on how you pay for your SIM, but it's only sending the information that's pertinent to the attack, and we know with a high % of confidence that it is because we're able to use our analytics across all of that.
You would make a lot of people happy because let's just say pumping data into Sims is not cheap. So
Right, exactly.
I do like that. I mean, what Anthony's saying, Anthony's not wrong, right? Like we're getting bleed over between vendors in the different spaces.
Right.
That issue kind of aside, I do see a value in the idea of like filtering some of that stuff before you get it in, right? Because on one side, you're going to have the SIM vendors like send us all
the things. Yeah. Right.
belong to us, right? Because
Exactly.
that's how they make their money. And I mean, I tease them a little bit, but I mean, that's how they make their money. If I'm making my money that way, I'd push all you can eat data too. The problem that we're seeing, and we're slowly running up against time, but I just kind of want to give you and Jake an opportunity to talk about this is, do you see that AI taking that next step, right? Because, we have other colleagues, that just, it's just machine learning, and Lloyd's shaking his head because a good friend of ours just hates hates the term AI. It's like just fancy machine learning.
Yeah.
I understand the concept, right? And I needed to mature. I was just for my podcast, I was interviewing actually a former ex anonymous person yesterday, and it was a really heavy, deep conversation. And we both talked about like that need to have it mature one more, because to what you're talking about and what Anthony's talking about, I really needed to filter out more noise, right? And how is it going to be able to filter out one noise? It's got to get away from the if then, right? Like if then is first level stuff, and even if then or if else,
We
right?
need really fancy algorithms,
Right?
Yeah,
and data
exactly.
science and
We
all that.
really
stuff.
need,
Yeah.
but we still need the industry to push, because I need to know, and Lloyd knows this use case, right? Is our leaders want to get our system to the point where you have a nurse, right? She's normally an ER nurse. She's normally at this particular hospital system, and she has this type of access. For emergency reason or whatever, she needs to pick up a shift at the children's hospital, right? Maybe the cancer ward or something else like that. So she's going to need, a different level of access. And while the EMR and everything else and IAM takes care of that, it may still want to be alert, right? So now you have something to where it's smaller geolocation, right? It's a different level of access, right? And a new data set that she's asking. And right now, and this is why Anthony's shaking his head, right now that AI doesn't exist. But
Right.
for us to stay ahead of the bad guys, we need it to go to that. So that was a little long-winded. My apologies. I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, I mean, trend is focusing on the malicious bad behavior, the files, the vulnerabilities, the preventative measures to stop the bad guys from getting in, stop the emails from getting to the user so that they don't click on them. So we focus more on that side of it. I know what you're asking. I don't know if, at least today, we do it to that level, because we don't.
Oh, you don't. Are those discussions being had with like your development teams and your planning teams?
I'm not previewed to that. I can tell you that ultimately, as a trend kind of outlook for the next couple years, is focused around providing hybrid cloud security, which we started the conversation with, and then Vision 1, or our XDR story, which is taking all this information and making it manageable for someone like a security team or an analyst to go actually, do what should be done, or react to it in some way, without having to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out if it's worthwhile or not, because a lot of the times that stuff gets ignored, and maybe it shouldn't, but it's just like you say, alert fatigue. You don't have time to kind of comb through all that. So we're not replacing a SIM or a SOAR. We're complementing it in a way where we're adding value.
SOAR. Hold on. I just got you. Well, give you a chance. What does SOAR mean?
Security operate. I have to look it up.
Security, orchestration, automation.
Okay, I was gonna say no judgment for me, because I had to look up what the C meant in SCADA. So no judgment from me. Well,
yeah. So yeah, I would say that those are kind of the key parts that, as an organization, we're focused on, and that's driven by our customer base and what our customers are needing. I think some of the stuff that you guys are talking about is definitely things that I'll bring back to our development teams, and our organization's very heavily led by the development and engineering background. So when we bring things to our organization that, hey, we got lots of customers asking for this type of stuff, we, if we haven't already anticipated that as being something where we see the business going, then we do course correct. So
Anthony's always willing to give his opinions and advice to development teams.
Anybody who will listen.
Anybody who will listen. All right. So I do like to end things like on a positive note. So as far as like Trend Micro and looking at 2021 holistically, I'll start with you, Jacob Moore. What are you most hopeful for? What are you most excited about this year?
So I'm excited about a lot of our cloud native tools, right? I mean, we're facing one of the biggest challenges, and that's how do we enable cloud native builders the ability to implement security, but don't slow down their development, don't slow down, all their deployments, right? And Trend's really shifting a lot of focus into runtime container security, and a lot of the cloud technologies like file storage security, application security, network security, right? And it's all great and all, but we're trying to make it easy for everyone to use, right? So, I mean, I feel like that's one of the biggest
Easy's
pain
good.
points.
Make
Easy
it,
is always
make it
good.
transparent. I preach that all the
Exactly.
time.
Yep. I mean, that's in Trend from a person. I used to be full stack engineer, DevOps engineer, and from my perspective, they've done a fantastic job of making them things easy to use. And to add on with what Will said, I think our end goal is to also bring up the Vision One product into the cloud space as much as we can, into network security, into runtime container security, and really enable a security analyst to get full visibility and confidence in his environment, right? Because as we go to the hybrid cloud, there's lots of different moving pieces, and I think that's another struggle where the conformity product comes in to really close them gaps down and break that barrier between development and security and DevOps. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of Trends focus shift to in 2021 is to, create a bridge for them teams and really enable everyone to add security and not slow them down.
Excellent. All right. Last but not least, Will, what are you most excited for in 2021?
Yeah. Are we talking like specific to
Both
career and work?
For Trend, what are you looking forward to for Trend releasing, and what do you most hopeful for in security?
Ultimately for me, I mean, I've been with Trend for quite a while, and I'm just excited to help people, like just share information. I love what you guys are doing here with the Cloud Security Alliance. Like that's my main objective. If Trent can help with that, then great. If we talk and it doesn't make sense, then that's okay too. We just do so many things. So I just love being involved. I'm a West Michigan guy. I live here in Grand Rapids. So
you're freezing with us right now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just, whatever I can do to help is what I'm excited for. I think, our Vision One and Cloud One tools and platforms are going to be kind of the excitement for us for 2021. And it's obvious lots of customers are trying to figure out how to utilize the cloud so we can help remove that friction from a security standpoint.
Notice Lloyd keeps shaking his head because about 3 or 4 years ago, when we were arm wrestling with our infrastructure brothers and sisters, and they kept on saying, no, Lloyd's like, hybrid's not going away. So Lloyd, all 3 years later, you get to say, I told you so.
Yes, I told you so.
Hybrid, it's no longer the future. It's here. You're not going to have any systems that are completely private anymore. It's just APIs are just blown up. So Anthony, Lloyd, anything else before we let these gentlemen go about their fine day? Or gentlemen go about their day?
Appreciate the conversation, guys. It was great speaking with you today.
Yes, thank you. It was,
thanks for having us. I like what you guys are doing here too. I wanted to add in. I mean, it's always cool to see where the industry is going and getting different feedback from people in different areas of security and in the cloud. I think as a community, that'll help us grow and adopt, this new age of hybrid cloud and security. So kudos to you guys, definitely.
We appreciate it, and as long as our listeners keep listening and support us, we can do cool things like this until they kick us off the YouTubes in the internets. All right, everyone, we hope this episode was very helpful in understanding, and thank you for putting up with Anthony.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
All right. We'll let Matt can work his editing magic now. So that wasn't too painful. Well, we have a tendency of going in rabbit holes.
That's perfectly okay.
Sorry about that.
No, I that's how it goes. I mean, Trend just covers so much that you can't help but not go into a million directions, really. So I mean, that was fine. I was in my mindset when I talked to Matt. He was like, "It's infrastructure as a service, and that's all we're going to focus on." So, like in my mind,
no. Once he made it so the inmates were gonna run the asylum for a day.
Yeah.
That went out the window. I just wanted to hear about your product. Some good questions.
Well, here's, I mean, I it is my own fault, but I tend to go into these conversations
Rants.
without knowing what the hell I'm even talking about or looking at.
Oh,
So,
well, that's
so when I was
probably-
like, oh, so this is a gateway, it wasn't like me trying to be an asshole or anything. I'm like, I
He
literally have no
he
idea
really
what the
wanted
fuck we're
to
talking
know.
about. Yeah.
well,
No, you're fine. And it's I haven't seen like with this product just came out in 2021, right? So I've personally implemented it in my dev VPC environment where I inspect traffic from the internet to my VPC, but I haven't seen very many people implement this yet. So, you know, I just as I grow and see these things, I'll understand a little bit better than I do right now.
That's one we probably should have had a slide. Like we got to figure out like what's the secret amount of slides, right? Because this isn't like it's not another demo, right? Like we don't want you to do death by PowerPoint. But Anthony, this is good for maybe for certain technology. You know, if we're meeting with vendors that have a newer technology, then we probably should have a slide because we
or
did
at least an
Excellion
architecture,
had
at least a
one where-
topology or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I honestly, as you guys thought that, I was like thinking in my house, like I wish I could show them this topology diagram. They'd be like, "Oh, that makes perfect sense." And there's 3 or 4 different ways you can deploy it, and I'm like, I don't even know where to
have it, or
begin
your
in this
marketing team
conversation.
won't let you use it.
No, we have it documented on our website. No,
Oh, okay.
We have,
okay.
yeah. So I was like, I wish I could show them this because it would make more sense, you know, for you to physically see the different setups you could, you know, apply based on how
Well,
you
I
have your.
blame Matt. It's not your fault. It's not your fault, Jake.
I will say too, although we're calling it new in 2021, the technology itself has been around for many years. So
Right.
it's built off our on-prem network security IPS, same technology. There's a lot of various advantages that we have in terms of throughput that our competition can't touch.
Mhm.
And that's some of the secret sauce, but you know, it's just somewhat newer. It's been in beta and testing in the cloud, but it's technology that's been around for a while, just built for
Just using it in a new fashion.
Right.
Okay, well, I do have to jump to my day job because the promise to my leadership is I don't let the side gig, whatever Lloyd and I have,
We don't get
whatever
paid
we
for
call
this
this.
shit, so you tell me.
So yeah, we do this for free. Anthony gets paid for everything because he's a security architect now. So
I'm never gonna live that down, am I?
no, you're not. It's all right. Okay, awesome, you guys. I appreciate it.